how did you put yourself out there? Like, I don't know, not a lot of people have that confidence to put themselves out there, like especially nowadays Instagram reels, it's so popular and a lot of coaches are telling their clients to try Instagram reels, but they're kind of hesitant because it's not them, it's
Mhm.
not within their comfort zone. And I feel like as a speaker it's kind of the same, you'll be speaking in front of a lot of people and not everybody is comfortable doing that. Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Christy Yoder, host of the Master Delegator Podcast. The Master Delegator Podcast is for busy and overwhelmed entrepreneurs who want to learn how to become effective in the area of delegation and learn how to hire great virtual assistants to help them scale their business and have more time and freedom. If you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing and don't forget to click the notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. All right, let's get started. Hey, welcome to the Master Delegator Podcast. Today we are going to talk about a very important topic with my guest today, Kerry Heaps. We will be talking about the art of sales follow-up, when it begins, and how to create a follow-up plan and how you can delegate this process to somebody else so you as the business owner won't have to do it alone. And we're gonna talk about different stuff that you'd find more value in. And so before we dive in, let me introduce you to my guest for today. So Kerry is an entrepreneur of 16 years. Wow. She is the president of Book, Speak, Repeat. Sorry, let me repeat that. Kerry is an entrepreneur of 16 years. She is the president of Book, Speak, Repeat, and the host of Book, Speak, Repeat podcast. She is a sought-after speaker on topics such as leveraging your publicity to close more deals, bodies don't lie, body language basics, the significance of color in wardrobe and the psychology behind it, the network game, making networking work for your business, and the fortune is in the follow-up, which is the topic that we're going to be talking about today. She is the author of Pitch Like a BITCH. I want to keep my podcast clean, but you know what I'm talking about. That stands for Branding Intelligence through Cross-Promotional Habits. Top 10 Tips to Pitch Like a Pro. She is also the author of the Create Your Own Media series for podcasting, publishing, and publicity. And she also has an extensive background in sales, networking, recruiting, and training. She is a former model who specialized in trade show and print work, and an experienced judge on the beauty pageant circuit. And she has also interviewed celebrities such as co-hosts of Shark Tank, Barbara Corcoran, authors Larry Winget, Jeffrey Hazlett, former Miss West Virginia and QVC talk show host Kim Parrish, and many more. This introduction is just so awesome. It blows my mind. You know what? As I was reading the introduction, I was like, she is a former model? Like, that is just so awesome. So, Kerry, before we dive in, I want to know more about your entrepreneurial journey. Like, how did you start 16 years ago and what were you doing before?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on the program. I'm happy to be here with you and your listening audience. And I'm just so honored that I was selected as a guest. So thank you for that. I have a great entrepreneurial story. As you said, I started my business 16 years ago. June of next year will be 17 years. So I'm like, wow. I can't believe it's been this long. But it's kind of a varied story, but I'll tell you my background. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. My father, he was an electrician. He's retired now, but he was an electrical contractor, had a fairly large company in Maryland. We relocated to Florida when I was only 12. So I consider myself a native Floridian. But I grew up in an entrepreneurial home, which is very different from growing up in a home where your parents work from 8 to 5. So for example, when I was sick at school, if I didn't feel well and somebody had to pick me up, that was always my father, who would come and get me. My growing up, my summers, I would have my summers off and I would spend those with my father. One summer in particular, my dad loves antique boats and motors, and he got a antique cabin cruiser that he restored one summer. And every day over the summer, we would get up, we had our little routine where we would go to like the 7-Eleven, he would get his coffee, he would give me a little bit of money to buy. We were supposed to have breakfast, but we both love sweets. So I was like, here's some pies and tasty cakes and different things that I would get that we could snack on, on the drive down there. And, I would just spend the day with him, while he was repairing his boat. Sometimes I would help him. Sometimes I would be inside the cabin playing. It was just a great feeling. Most people don't have that with their parents. They may have like a 2-week vacation. So I grew up in a very different household. Now you fast forward many years later, after I got out of college, I had a variety of different jobs. All of them were wonderful. I've worked for law firms. I have worked in the construction industry. I've been an executive admin for like a C-level staff, the CEO, COO, where I had my own office and I was planning events and doing all of these different things for the company. And again, great jobs that once people get them, hey, this is security, it's a great job, and they just stay there. And I've always had that thing, Christy, where I've never felt satisfied. It's like, I wanted something more. I wanted to be the boss. I knew. And finally I determined, I'm like, you know what? I really need to have my own business. And what kind of pushed me into that, you go back to my modeling background, because I modeled when I was very young, my teens, 19 through 21 is when I did a lot of the modeling. And I really loved that industry. So I got a job part-time in the evenings teaching modeling and acting classes at John Casablanca in Jacksonville. And I had so much fun. It's like, I can't believe they're paying me to do this. I just loved it. And then they came to me and said, we have an opening for an inside sales job. We think you would be great at it. Would you apply? And I was like, sales? I had never done sales before. And I'm like, oh, I don't think I can do that. That's not me. And I kind of took a chance. I left my corporate job, and it was an all commission job. So if you didn't make sales, you didn't eat, but I really flourished in it. It was one of those positions I would come in, do my job. Nobody was looking over me, and I did very, very well. And I was like, this to me is a really good testament that I will do well having my own business. After that, I, had another outside sales job that I did for a while. And I'm like, you know what? I want to have my own business. And I originally started to do modeling and acting, to teach, classes, to do image consulting, doing the things that I love to do. But entrepreneurship's never a straight line. I saved up for a year. I worked, again, part-time teaching modeling and acting classes. And back then when I started, it's not like it is today where you can put a website up in a day and do it yourself with Wix or Shopify. Back then, you had to if you didn't know HTML coding, you had to hire someone to do your site. So I paid money to have someone do my site. I saved up money for a whole year to have a little bit of a cushion. It wasn't much, but a little bit of a cushion. And finally, the day came, I put in my 2-week notice at my job, and it was at a staffing firm. I did mostly business development. So I was out in the field finding job orders for the recruiters to fill. And then sometimes I would come back into the office and help them, fill those positions. So that 2-week time period, I worked it that Friday. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm free. This is going to be great. That Monday morning, I woke up at my regular time, and 6:30 in the morning, it was very overcast. I'll never forget this. I walked to my dining room window, and it was still kind of foggy, and you could a little bit of fog and just very dreary. And I thought, oh gosh, what did I just do? But I have to tell you, that was 16 years ago. I would not trade my worst day as an entrepreneur for my best day in corporate. I think when it's the right fit for you to be an entrepreneur, it's the right fit. Mm-hmm. But it's just, I took that leap of faith. I mean, sometimes you just have to, everybody always wants to wait till everything's perfect. Nothing will ever be perfect. You have to start where you're at, and just take that leap and just start flying. So that's kind of my story of how I got started. But when I first started out on my own, like I said, I wanted to do classes, work with models and actors and people in the pageant industry. But because I had been a recruiter, at the time, business development recruiter, I was doing a lot of trade shows. I was doing a lot of different things that were more business development. And, I would have networking companies, say, hey, we're going to start a new chapter of our networking group in this location. Will you help us? Because I had a knack for putting the right people together. And I said, there's a lot of work that goes into this. I think I'm going to do this for myself until my business takes off and I'll make some extra money. I'll be able to meet some people. So I started doing networking events from the get-go. I would get people, I'd charge them $5 at the door to come and network at Borders Books. And then that turned into lunch events. And then I did my first trade show. And I had that meeting planner hat on, doing my own events and getting butts and seats and selling out the exhibitor space. So you fast forward many years later, and I started with Speak Repeat, this division of my company, about 6 years ago, because I wanted to get back into speaking. I kind of fell into that at the beginning part. I would have colleges call me and say, hey, you used to be a recruiter. Can you come and talk to our graduating class? And back then, when I first started my company, there were more paid engagements than there were speakers. So they were seeking us out, where now it's totally different. So I kind of entrepreneurship, I thought it would be like this, and it's been all over the place.
It's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah. I tell people, do your business plan in pencil, because it's never going to go like you think it will.
Exactly.
You're going to be using the eraser a lot. So that's kind of how I started and how I got to where I'm at now.
And that's really cool. And so right now you help speakers have more opportunities, right?
Correct. So
that's what you focus on right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a speaker myself. I use my own service, clearly. But we, every Monday we send out something called Media Monday, where we have different podcasting, writing opportunities that they can apply to, because getting noticed and building up your brand, it has a lot to do with speaking. And a lot of people don't recognize the power of that. And then every Saturday we send out all the open call for submissions that we found through the week. And then every week we do something called Meet the Meeting Planner, where we have meeting planners come on, where the speakers can interact and do an introductory call. So we are helping them get in front of meeting planners, getting the opportunities. But after that, the follow-up and the closing, it lies directly with them. So
yeah, exactly. And so how did you put yourself out there? Like, I don't know, not a lot of people have that confidence to put themselves out there, like especially nowadays, Instagram Reels, it's so popular, and a lot of coaches are telling their clients to try Instagram Reels, but they're kind of hesitant because it's not them, it's mm-hmm. not within their comfort zone. And I feel like as a speaker, it's kind of the same, you'll be speaking in front of a lot of people, and not everybody is comfortable doing that. Heck, if you're an introvert, that's probably much harder, than an extrovert trying to figure out what to say or having the right words to say. So how did you put yourself out there, and what were the struggles that you have experienced, and how did you overcome those struggles?
Well, that's a great question. I will tell you, there's a lot of people who I talk to. I'm like, I always find whenever I go and speak, there's at least one person in the audience that has thought about becoming a speaker. And then I always ask them, could that be you? And I either get that terrified look like, oh, no, I can't do that. And that's fine. I always tell people, don't push yourself to the point where because if you push yourself to a point where you are doing something completely out of your comfort zone, like you were talking about Instagram Reels, and you're not, comfortable with it, it's going to affect you negatively, and it can affect your business negatively. Same thing with going on stage. If you're not a good speaker, if you are dragging your words and you're putting people to sleep, you're not going to get booked. It's going to hurt your business ultimately. So think about, where you're at and what you're trying to do. Everybody has a little bit of a fear of public speaking. I still get butterflies in my stomach before I go on stage. It's normal. But then once I get up there, I'm fine. A lot of people don't know this about me, but on a personal level, I actually have a social anxiety disorder, which a lot of people are shocked when I tell them that, because they're like, how, that doesn't make any sense. I just saw you do a keynote. No, there's no way you have that.
I know. I mean,
social,
as I'm talking to you and listening to you right now, you look so confident. Like, I wouldn't have guessed that you have social anxiety disorder.
Well, social anxiety is different from like what we're doing now or when I take the stage. That for me, when my brain kind of turns on, it's like, okay, it's time to perform. It's business. This is what you're paid to do. You need to do this. Where with social, if somebody said, hey, Kerry, why don't you come to my birthday party? They would see me kind of retreat into my shell. I wouldn't talk to that many people. And I may even have to leave if I start to feel like I'm going to have a panic attack. So it's something I've struggled with. And I still to this day struggle with it. There's different things that I have been doing to ensure that I am getting over that, but that is my choice. So I do tell people, if you're not ready to, if your anxiety level is that bad, do not push yourself by any means, whether it's speaking or Instagram reels or getting on Facebook. You need to find what's good, what's going to work for you and what you will use. It's the same thing like with follow-up. If people don't, or if they're not comfortable and they don't like the follow-up system they have, they're not going to use it. Like I am a pen and paper kind of gal. I mean, that's how I do my follow-up, honestly, but that works for me, but it probably wouldn't work for you. Other people like things that are electronic or plug into Outlook, or they want to use a combination, but you have to do what makes things easy for you. That's going to be your comfort level, because at the end of the day, you won't use it. And that's something I found too. We're talking about Instagram. We recently deleted Facebook and Instagram. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, and I have my YouTube channel. Those are the three ones that I'm focusing on. I tried Facebook for many years, but it's also a great example of what you're talking about, that I tried to fit into that realm that wasn't working. And I spent a lot of unnecessary ad money, a lot of unnecessary time that could have been spent somewhere else.
Yeah.
So you have to look at those types of things. And I do believe in coaching. I think coaching is a great thing, but you and your coach have to come to an agreement. If they're telling you to do things and you're just completely out of your, then it's not the right fit. Find another coach. Because I've done that too, where I've listened to a coach and took their advice and it bombed. It just completely bombed. And I had no one to blame but myself, because ultimately we are responsible for our own actions. No matter what we delegate or automate, it's in the end, it's always the responsibility falls on our shoulder as the business owner.
Yeah, that's so true. And that reminds me of what John Maxwell said. He said that you should focus on your strengths. Mm-hmm. And if you feel like Instagram and Facebook are not part of your strength, like your core strength, then go to different platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter. Exactly. Yeah, like don't force yourself to do something that you don't like doing, that you're not passionate about. So I want to,
and just to piggyback off of that, I would say too, look at it this way for people who are listening as well. If you're still struggling with that, if you went out on a date with someone, if you're single and you go out on a date with someone that your friend fixed you up on, and your family loves that person, and your friends think, oh, you guys make such a great couple, you should still, and you're not feeling it. You don't have that spark. You're like, oh, that's a nice person, but I don't want to see them again. If you continue to go out with them because everybody else tells you that, the only person that ends up miserable is you. So you have to look at it the same way, just as dating too.
That's true. Yep. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the art of sales follow-up. Where does it begin? And when it begins, what do you do and how do you end it?
Well, typically follow-up is going to start the minute you start really talking to someone, the minute you meet them. That's when the follow-up process needs to start, which sounds a little weird, but just to hang with me for a moment. So let's just say, for example, Christy, you went to a networking function and you met 5 new people. You got their business cards. and you went home and maybe you sent them an email and said, hey, it was great to meet you. Let's meet for coffee, talk one-on-one. And then you don't hear anything back. And then you don't do anything else, with those leads. They just kind of sit on your desk. And I know everybody has these. They have a stack of business cards, or even like in their email, inbox, they have a stack of emails that they need to, they're earmarked for follow-up, or they sent an email and they heard nothing back. So follow-up really begins once we meet someone. So you need to start thinking about how you're going to do your follow-up. Some of the tips that I like to offer to people is, number one, when you go, we'll use the networking event example. If you go and you're collecting business cards, what I like to do is I like to write on the back of the business card where I met them. If they're telling me, like, for example, if I had met you at a networking function, and like we were talking earlier, you told me you're originally from the Philippines, I'd make a note of that. I would also make a note that, you have so many virtual assistants that work, with you in, within your organization, and the different things that, anything else that you were telling me, like maybe you're celebrating your birthday soon, or any other details that I think would be pertinent. Where I find with follow-up, where people really drop the ball, is they don't take notes. People compliment me all the time, thinking, they're like, gosh, you have a great memory. And I'm like, no, actually, I don't. I just write everything down. So when I do finally get you on the phone, even if it's a month later, hey, how about, last time I talked to you, you were going on vacation. How was your trip to Hawaii? So I would not be able to remember that if I didn't write it down. So if you write it on the back of the card, that's always good to do. Another thing you might want to do too, just, a networking tip too, is that trying to get with, if you walk into a room and you don't know anybody, approach anyone. But if you're sitting down, like to go to a lunch event, make a point to sit next to someone who's on your left that you don't know. And, again, exchange cards. Some of the questions I love to ask prospects or ask people that I've just met, because again, you never know when you follow up how you can help them or how they can help you. But I always like to ask, how can I help you this week? What are you needing? I also like to ask them who makes a good strategic partner for you. Like, for example, you're a virtual assistant. So maybe someone else who, obviously people who use you value their time. So people who value their time may also have a house cleaner, or, have a personal chef, or maybe they also have, someone who like a personal trainer, or, they have someone that helps them with different chores and so forth at their house. Maybe they have a dog sitter, whatever. That could also make a good strategic partner for you, where you can exchange information and help each other, because it's not conflicting, it's not competing business. Another thing I'd like to ask them is, what situations are people or businesses in that make them a good client for you? Because obviously for you, I would have to guess it's probably people who feel overworked, but they can't hire someone. They can't afford that yet. They can't afford their first employee. Or maybe they want to hire another employee, but they don't have enough workload for them. Or they just need to delegate. They have to let go of some of their responsibilities. Okay, so I would make note of that. And then I would also ask them, when you're actually out there, when I'm, let me tell you a little bit about my client base, who I work with. You tell me who you'd benefit from an introduction. So if we were sitting down talking, I'd be like, well, I primarily work with mostly attorneys, CPAs, professional service providers, because everyone automatically thinks I just work with speakers, and I don't. Service providers and attorneys and business professionals do very well in our program. So I would tell you that, and then I would say, who do you think you'd benefit the most from an introduction? Now, this does two things. It tells, for those who are listening, it helps me to help Christy, but it's a light bulb's going to go off in Christy's head and go, oh, you like to work with attorneys? I have like 3 or 4 that I work with right now. So it's always mutually beneficial. So again, these are things that you can use in follow-up. You got to ask the right questions. That's why follow-up begins at the beginning when you meet someone. So I'm going to go back after my networking event. Maybe I have 5 business cards. I'm going to write out an email and say, hey, it was great to meet you. But to be honest, what I'd like to do is something a little bit different. I like to send a card in the mail. Now, you can go to any dollar store, Target, anywhere. You can get these at Dollar Tree, 8 to a pack. They're Hallmark thank you cards. And what I'd like to do is just write up a little note that says, hey, thank you so much for, taking the time to get to know me. I, really appreciate, I might reference something that you I'll have to tell my friend Vivielle that I met someone else that's from the Philippines, and then I'll include my business card and I drop it in the mail. Now, that postage stamp that I paid for and the $1 that I got for the, the thank you cards is a very small price. If you're doing things that other people are not doing, and most people are not doing that. I can't tell you how many times I get people who call me or shoot me an email. Hey, I just got your card in the mail. Thank you so much. And I just sent them a thank you card, and they're calling me to thank me for sending them a thank you card. So it's the little things that are going to really, raise your vibration with that person when you start to follow up. Now, with those, I like to do with my follow up. Like I said, I'm normally more of a pen and paper gal, so I keep track of mine, just with paper. If you want to do this in Excel, if you want to use Zoho, Salesforce, whatever, as long as you're using it. But I input their, I have their information. I sent them a thank you card. I'll put that, I'll make a note on the back of the business card, hey, send thank you card, or I might put them in you can get the little 3-ring binder books and you can staple their business card to it. And I write out when I mailed the thank you card, where I met them. I already have all the notes on the back of the card, but for example, if I feel like they're a prospect for me, I may send them an email to say, hey, here's a quick video about our service. If you're, watch the video, if you're still interested, there's a form at the bottom you can fill out. We can schedule a time to talk. So I may have sent them that. And then if I don't hear anything back, I may call them in the week and say, hey, it's Kerry Heaps calling from Book, Speak, Repeat. I sent you that form. I didn't know if maybe it went to your junk folder. Did you get a chance to watch the video? And if they tell me, yeah, I did, Kerry, but honestly, I don't think public speaking or doing speaking gigs is going to be the right fit for me. Okay, great. No, I really appreciate your honesty. But before I go to last ditch effort with follow-up, I'll ask them another question. I know it's not a right fit for you, but do you know anybody in your immediate circle, just one person that you can think of that you might want to just forward that link to? Do you have someone in mind? And if they do, I'm like, okay, great. If you could go ahead and forward that, I would really appreciate it. So it's kind of like a last ditch effort. And then I sort of just put an X through it because again, if it's not something with my service, if it's not something they want to do, because again, it's doing the work, but also you got to get up on stage. So if they're not comfortable with that, I don't push it. But you want to consistently follow up. I usually with follow-up will leave one voicemail and I'll put LVM for left voicemail. After that, if they don't call me back, I'll call again, like in a couple of days or the following week, but I do not leave a message. I'll just call intermittently until I can get them on the phone. And usually when I do that, I find that I have to call anywhere. If I look at my sheet, it's got like 7 or 8 where I've dialed their number 7 or 8 different times over a period of time. And then I got them on the phone. And I find normally they're like, oh yeah, Kerry, I'm so sorry. I meant to call you back. They have other things going on. So never assume in the follow-up process that they're not interested because you didn't hear back from them. I had a podcast person just recently who, their mother had passed away. And luckily they had told me beforehand, which I was glad because they're doing something with us, later on, but I have to find a replacement for that. But logistically, you never know what's going on in someone's life. Their, personal life, professional life, we never know. So don't automatically assume you haven't heard back that they're not interested. They could have deleted your number or they forgot or something else happened, something, happened at home that needs their attention. So never assume. Okay. Now, once you get them on the phone, again, talking to them, hey, whatever your next process is in your sales process, which if you don't have a sales process, you need to figure one out because you need to know what your next step is going to be. So you hand walk them through that process. One of my most successful stories that I have with follow-up is one of my clients, which they're not a client now, but when I first started in business, because we were, doing some different things, it took me 2 years of follow-up to close this particular deal. Now, most people would have given up after 6 months. I still continue to follow up. And with follow-up, you always want to set up the next step. So what do I mean with that? So like with this prospect, when I called him, what happened was this gentleman was leaving a big company and starting his own firm. And he said, I'm not ready to do it quite yet. Can you call me in 90 days? Sure. So 90 days from that time period, I picked up the phone and called him. We had a conversation. Oh, Kerry, I'm probably like another 6 months out now. no problem. During that 6-month time frame, I was still connecting with him on LinkedIn. I would send an article, or I might send a birthday card in the mail. Hey, just thinking of you, hope all is well. But what I would do when he told me 6 months, I'm like, okay, 6 months from now is going to be December 1st. I'll give you a call then. In the interim, if you need me, reach out to me. December 1st comes, I'm on the phone calling him. I leave a message. If I don't get him on the phone, I'm calling again, until I get him on the phone. And we have that other conversation. But things just kept progressing where he, it's still another 6 months out, or we're working on getting funding, whatever. And when the day finally came where he's like, okay, we're ready. He even said to me, the reason I'm going with you is because you did everything you said you were going to do. You told me you were going to call me, you did. You told me you'd send me an email, you did. And you did not forget about us. So that means a lot. So you always want to be setting up the next step with your prospect. Never put that on them. Never. So even if you send them a proposal, hey, I'm going to send this over to you. Would it be okay if I give you a call back on Monday to make sure that you got it and answer any questions you have? Yes, that would be fine. And then call them on Monday. Never, ever, ever assume. And like on Monday, when you call them, if you don't get them on the phone, leave them a message. If you don't hear from them in another 2 days, call again. Don't leave a message. Just call until you get them on the phone, to find out what's going on. But I always make sure I'm setting up the next step with follow-up, because that always falls back on us.
Yeah, that is so true. So from what you said, these are my key takeaways. See, I'm taking notes. That's the very first thing you said. So first, take notes, ask the right questions, and do things that other people are not doing, kind of like sending a thank you card. Yeah. And then call them. And then if they said, no, this is not for me, ask them if somebody else that they know would benefit from your services. So ask for referrals. And then have a system in place. Never assume. And you should have a sales process in place, and you should not stop following up and commit to what you said. And don't let your prospect lead you to the next steps. You should be the one leading them into the next steps. Now, my question is, when do you stop following up if you don't hear anything from the person that you are following up?
Typically, I don't have this issue. If I do have someone that like maybe 3 weeks out, I haven't heard back from them, I will send them another email and just say, hey, Brenda, I've left you a couple of messages and I haven't heard anything back. If you don't mind, please just email me or give me a call and just let me know if you are planning on moving forward. That way I'm not bothering you. If it's not something that's of interest to you, that's perfectly fine. But if you could let me know either way, I would appreciate it. And 9 times out of 10, if I do send that to someone who does kind of ghost me per se, I do get a response back. It might be a week later, or it might be on LinkedIn, or it might be from somewhere else. And it's just basically that they're not interested. Now, another thing you can do with your follow-up to kind of help with that, it doesn't always help, but it's just an extra safeguard. Like when I do a sales presentation, or I'm showing people our service, I do this on Zoom, I share my screen so they can see all the different things that they get. I do tell them at the beginning, look, this may or may not be for you. If it's not, I am happy to share some tips to kind of help you get to where you need to be. But if you could let me know either way, and again, I ask them that at the end, does this sound like something that you'd like to continue pursuing, that you would like to sign up for? Because if it is, I'll send you, there's a couple of things I like to send you via email, but if not, I don't want to bother you with that. Which would you prefer? So that way you kind of give them the option. You always give your prospect a backdoor to run out of, and just in case, because it could be a pricing issue. It could be that, they're just not ready right now. Some people, it takes them longer. And I'm sure like even with your service, you've probably encompassed this, where sometimes people are thinking that, it's a VA, it's going to be like an internship and I can pay them $8 an hour. And it's like, no, it's a virtual assistant. That's totally different. You're going to be paying for their expertise. It's like paying for an employee without having to do the taxes and the insurance and all of that. So sometimes people get shell shock, or sticker shock, whatever. So you always want to give them that door. But I always let them know, please give me the courtesy of letting me know, because I don't want to, I definitely don't want to bother you if this is not something that you want to do. And if you, would prefer that I follow up, and I have had people who tell me that, well, can you follow up with me in 90 days? Normally, those people are not going to sign up. I do find that because you call them in 90 days and they're going to tell you another 90 days or another, even though they already have everything that they need, it's a good fit. They just don't want to tell you no for whatever reason, even though you've given them back doors to rent out. That does happen every once in a while. So right. I would say, use your best judgment. If you're finding, like the gentleman that I followed up with for 2 years, I knew that was going to come to fruition. It was just, he was starting his own firm. He needed to find real estate. He needed to find employees to hire. He needed, there was all these different things he had to do. He had to get his business licenses taken care of, all of these different things, and they weren't going to happen overnight. But someone that I talked to that's like, hey, they could start this tomorrow, then yeah. And they're telling me like every 90 days. Normally what I do at that point, the second time they tell me that, is I'll say, you know what, I totally understand. It sounds like you've got so much going on. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to send you an email. So when you're ready, you can come back to me. You've got my information. Just let me know. We're already connected on LinkedIn. So you'll be able to see all the different things that we're doing and opportunities you can participate in. So when you're ready, you can sign up. Yeah. Because sometimes you do need to, with some of them, you do need to let that go. Because if they're telling you that every 90 days, it's really, honestly, they're not interested. They just don't want to come out with it.
Yeah, that's true. Those are the yeses people. They don't know how to say no.
Again, if you do those two things, if you tell them, look, if you could let me know at the end of the presentation if this is something that you'd like to do, great. If not, that's okay too. I'll offer some tips and you could do the same thing too. You could offer them some tips of some things maybe that they could automate. And then once they get to that point where they can afford you or they can work with you, then you guys can reconvene. But then I also let them know, hey, look, at the end, when I'm done with my presentation, I say it again, but I say, is this something that you'd like to do? Because if it is, I have some things I'd like to email to you. And if not, then I have something else I can send to you that you can do on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, the idea of follow-up, this is really great because when you follow up, you get sales. If you don't follow up, you don't get sales. But I feel like for me, as a business owner, I don't have time to follow up. I feel like it's a very tedious task, and especially when you're not into administrative tasks, because this is heavy on admin tasks. And if you're a technical person, it's kind of, it's not something that you would want to be happy about doing. So how do you think a business owner can either delegate this, automate this, or maybe eliminate some of the things that are not really, helpful to the follow-up process?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So 2 things I would say. There are parts of follow-up that, yes, you could delegate. I'm not, with follow-up, I'm not a big fan of automation. If you're going to, you either do it yourself or have someone else help you with it. But when you're doing the calls, what I tell everyone is try to schedule, I have follow-up Friday for myself, where I take a 2-hour time frame that I'm doing nothing. I'm on the phone and I'm doing nothing but follow-up calls. And that's a 2-hour time. I treat it as a sales appointment, and that's what I'm doing, is all follow-up. Now, I would not delegate that to a virtual assistant, because if I get a prospect on the phone and they're like, well, yeah, I've been thinking about this, but what about, Kerry, what if I can't, I don't have a certain topic for the meeting plan. They're asking me maybe what I would consider a technical question. Your VA is not going to be able to answer that. You wouldn't be able to tell a client, based on, oh yeah, definitely Greg can do that. And then you go back and Greg's like, why'd you tell him that? I can't do that. So that part of follow-up, the prospect, you need to do. If you're going to be doing, if you benefit from the sale, you need to be doing that part of it. What you can delegate outside of that 2-hour time frame would be, for example, if you talk to a prospect, sending out reminder emails. You've scheduled a time to talk to Steve at 2:00 here. This is a reminder. Here's the Zoom information. Let us know if you need to, if you got to reschedule, whatever. So the administrative parts of that, after you've talked to them, like when I say, hey, I'm going to send you a couple of emails because you're talking about being interested, that the VA could do. Have email templates ready to go to send that particular information. Have the email, if they're not interested and there's something that you can give them or a product they can buy, have the VA do that. So they kind of take over of all of the logistics back end things where you're actually talking to the prospect. Because again, you could get if you got a prospect, here's the thing, if you were talking to, let's just say Greg is one of your clients, somebody I made up. And for example, he's like, Christy, I want you to follow up with all these people I've talked to see if they're going to come on board with us. Okay, great. So you're on the phone with one of Greg's prospects and they're like, I really want to do this, but I don't have the money right now. Can I pay half now? Can I do half later? And then you're going to have to say to the prospect, because you can't make that decision, right? Okay, so you have to be like, okay, well, I'm going to have to call Greg and get back to you. Okay, so you call Greg. Greg, he wants to do a payment plan. Can you do that? And this is the terms that he needs. Can you do this? Yes or no? Okay, great. Then you send the email to the prospect. You guys don't hear back for another week. If Greg was on the phone rather than you, and he said that, yeah, I can do that. Let me go ahead and take your credit card information. Or, he could have gotten that sale done right away. Where by having you do it, you just pushed it back, not on purpose, but because you're not the decision maker, you pushed that back for at least a week or two right there. And that prospect is probably going to go to someone else.
That's exactly true. I think,
and you're also, just one other quick thing with that. You're also going to get people, and I've had this happen with me where I've made the mistake of having someone make a call for me to a potential prospect because they're like, I would have my VA call and they're like, well, same thing. They're asking technical questions and the response is, well, I have to get with Kerry. And finally, the guy just said, you know what, just have her call me. And he hung up because he was mad, and rightfully so. That was my mistake. I should have been on the phone calling. That's why I said, anytime there is something that, closing with the closing aspect of this, you do not delegate that. Anything that's related to it, sending contracts, making sure the file's set up, making sure everything else is going according to plan, that you can delegate. I would not automate that. And I'll tell you what I don't like about automating with this process and why you should have a VA involved if you can't do this yourself. The reason you don't want to automate, I recently had it where I was reaching out to someone, I was looking for a business coaching supplement. And I went to someone's site, someone I knew, and I'm like, okay, well, how do I work with this person? So I'm looking at the site and I'm like, okay, so it was like, fill out this form. I'm like, okay, so I fill out the form. Then I get an email, watch this video. The video is an hour long. All right, so I watched the video. Then they're sending me another, fill out this, you can get a free consult. It's an $800 value. The paperwork they wanted me to fill out was about 2 or 3 pages long. And I went ahead and I was like, all right. So I went ahead and I did that. Then it's like, okay, well, now you got to schedule a time to talk. We'll get back to you in 48 hours if we feel you're a good fit, and we'll send you the scheduling link. So within that two-day time period, I'm like, gosh, why didn't I think about this? I'm like, I should have called so-and-so for this. I called this person. Yeah, Kerry, I can help you with that. Boom, everything was done that afternoon. So 2 days later, when I get this email stating, hey, come and schedule, you've been approved, schedule your time for your consult. I'm like, I replied back, not realizing all this stuff is automated, okay? Mind you, I'm thinking it's coming from someone, maybe her team or assistant. It's all automated. So I emailed back and said, hey, thank you so much, but I've actually found in the time frame this took, I actually found someone else and we're already working together. And I guess it just bounced off into automated space because I, again, got another email the next day. Oh, you haven't scheduled your consult yet. And I'm like, so then and all this did was frustrate me. It cost me more time and she lost out on the sale.
Wow.
So that's why you don't want to automate things that are involved in the sales process. Fine if you want to send out an email. And then like with me, my process that's automated, I'll send out an email. It sends people to a page, they watch a video, 5 minutes and under. they're interested, they fill out the form, that takes them to my calendar link, and they pick a date and time. That's the only thing that's automated. That's it. Those three things.
That's awesome. I feel like what you shared, I mean, they are real life experiences. I mean, those are true. Like, they happen in real life, but I feel like there are some ways that we could avoid those kinds of, if we say, errors or mistakes. So the very first thing that I outsourced was actually my sales process, to be honest. Like, so the discovery calls. So I find when I was the one alone in the business, I talk to people like 4 or 5 times a day, and that drains me a lot. And so the very first thing that I hire is someone who could do the discovery calls for me. Now, during the interview process, I was really very meticulous. I was really careful about hiring the perfect person or the right person to do the discovery calls for me. And so I found the right person. I trained her. Maybe I trained her for a month, and we had developed processes, SOPs, frequently asked questions, because since I was the one doing the sales calls when I was alone in the business, like, I kind of know already what our prospects are gonna ask me. So I developed like a process and frequently asked questions, and I trained my VA how to do that. And I feel like VAs are not necessarily just people who can do like admin tasks. They are like kind of like independent contractors, but they're just called virtual assistants because they're virtual and they're your assistant, but not necessarily just like a secretary. So this VA that I have, she was an operations manager back in the Philippines. So she has like 5 years of experience in operations. And so now I promoted her, and she is now my operations manager. So she used to do all my discovery calls and all that kind of stuff. And when I hired her, like, my business grew 10 times within 3 months after I had her do all my discovery calls. So I feel like if there are like processes in place, SOPs, and like questions that we know that our prospects may ask, kind of like, paying like not upfront, but paying like maybe 2 months, like half today and then half after a month. So I feel like if that is something that we know that is already like a question of a prospect, I feel like the VA can make a decision on that if we already know that that is a frequently asked question. And then when it comes to like automating sales process, I feel like you really have to be good at automating. I feel like the person that you talk to, like, and they made a mistake, I feel like they have not set up their sales process like that good enough. Because I feel like when you send them an email already that, hey, I already found someone, blah blah blah, that should stop right there. Their system, the system that they're using, should already like what do you call it, like kind of like determine that, okay, I should stop now and I should not send Kerry any more emails. So yeah, I feel like you really have to like be like informed of what you really need to do, like if you really want to be successful in delegation and automation. But what you have experienced, that is a real life story, and a lot of our clients have experienced that. And I feel like for me, I'm still learning a lot, but since I talk to a lot of people, I'm kind of like, okay, I don't want to do what she did before, like that mistake. So I'm gonna find ways how to kind of do better at it. So yeah, I feel like I just want to add to what you said, that yes, don't delegate those tasks if you don't feel like you have no idea how to do it, because you are gonna commit errors and mistakes. Might as well do it yourself manually if you have the time to do it. But if you feel like you don't have the time to do it, then learn how to delegate well and use the proper software so that you can automate those tasks. So this has been really good, Kerry. Like, to be honest, I have fear of follow-up. That what they call that FOFO, fear of follow-up. And I've learned a lot from you, and I think the main thing that I have really learned is do things that people are not doing. And just a simple thank you card, it's really helpful. And I feel like most people have underestimated the power of, just sending a simple thank you card to your client. So please expect a thank you card from me after this podcast interview as a simple
and I would
token of appreciation.
Yeah. And I would say too, Christy, just like even with you, it's at some point, I think so many people, like even with follow-up and closing, they try to pull themselves out of the process completely. And I'm sure at some point, even though you have someone doing your discovery calls, that you're still getting on the phone and talking to these clients at some point in the process. So see, that's the thing. You have to be involved with your success, and you've got to be involved. And to me, the closing and the follow-up are the most important, because that is where, again, something is going to creep up that could really, hurt you, or it could prolong the process. And that's the whole thing. So many people do. They try to, and again, that's what this particular coach was doing. She was completely removed from the process, meaning she had a video that was an hour, which I did wind up watching. But again, I look at all the time I wasted. So there's no way I'd refer anybody at this point, because I'm like, you're trying to, people want to give you money. Don't make them jump through all these hoops. That's just, that's crazy. You need to have a streamlined process, but don't make it to the point where it's like, it's like an obstacle course. You don't want to do that. So and I would say that too, just make sure that you're staying involved in the success of your process.
That's true. I like what you said. You need to make sure that you have a streamlined process. So whenever I go to like networking event and I meet people and they want to like talk to me, like I would not, it's case to case scenarios. Like if I attend a networking event and I know that I have a prospect and they met me personally, I would be the one doing the discovery calls. But I would then say, after discovery call, I would then say, hey, I'm gonna have this person follow up with you. Are you okay with that? And they're like, yeah, that's good. Because I feel like it's kind of like
and you're setting up that next step for them. You're walking them through what's going to happen. So that is perfectly fine. But I do find that a lot of people with the follow-up, they just want to dump it on their VA, or they want it, or what's even worse, they'll get an intern. And I do think it's good to have an intern. There's a place for that. But honestly, you need to have an internship program. You need to have it very, it's not, again, you can't get someone who's fresh out of school to do administrative work if they've never done it and you're not paying them. They have to get something out of it. That's a learning process for them.
Yeah. Internship is totally like
interns are completely different, but I'm sure that could be a totally another show for us to do.
I know. Yay. Yeah. Well, I love our discussion. I feel like we can go on and talk about different stuff, but I learned so much from you, Kerry, and I appreciate the value that you have provided to my listeners. So any last words of wisdom that you can give to us?
I would say, with follow-up, again, delegating, it needs to be implemented in your business. I think as a business owner, I think the one thing we've all struggled with is letting go. And I wish I had a formula for just saying, let go and relinquish that control, but I just don't. I think we all struggle with it all the time. Your clients probably do as well. But I would say, it's really, it's good if you want to grow. Not so much that you want to maybe have like 5 people on your team, but you can still have a very healthy, profitable business with just yourself, maybe 1 employee and a couple of virtual assistants. So you have to look at and determine, okay, is this person, their experience, like you said, your VA had, or the person that helps you with the discovery calls, operations background. So you have to look at everybody's background and figure out what their strengths are, what they can bring to the table, and then let them do their job. Just let them do it.
I love it. Same as you, I wish there's a formula for letting go easily, right? But there's none.
Nope.
Well, I think humility is, but it's also hard. That's hard.
And letting go of the ego. Everybody
exactly.
Ego, so
yeah. I love this interview, Kerry. Thank you so much. Where can people find you online?
They can visit us on our site at bookspeakrepeat.com. And if you go to bookspeakrepeat.com/professional, I have a video there you can watch. It talks about our program. And then if you're interested in learning more, there's a form you can fill out down at the bottom.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kerry. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video and you want to listen to the full episode, please type in Master Delegator on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast channels, or simply click the link in the description box below. Also, please subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you again on the next episode. Bye!